Seventh module of SQL Server learning series is going on, and in this video segment we will discuss about the triggers. We can define a trigger is like a special kind of stored procedure that automatically executes when an event occurs in the database server. So there are some types of the triggers. There are the Ddl triggers and Dml triggers. Ddl triggers are the data definition language triggers, and these triggers fires when there is some structural changes, like if we are creating or modifying or dropping a table, then the DDL triggers can capture these changes. Let's see the example of DDL trigger. This is a query analyzer tool for SQL Server, and here will present the DDL trigger demo. We will create a table which will store the changes whenever we will do any structural changes, and we will create a DDL trigger for stored procedure. Whenever we will create the procedure, alter the procedure, or drop the procedure, that this trigger will store these changes in a table which we will create here. So this is the table we are going to create proc logs, and it will save the changes in this field in XML format. Table has created, and now we are going to create this trigger, DDL trigger, which will fire the event whenever there is a change related to the procedure. Either we are creating a procedure, or we are altering or dropping the procedure. This trigger will fire events which will store the changes related to the procedure in our table. So the syntax to create a trigger is like this: create trigger, and this is the trigger name. And for the DDL trigger is creating on the database level, so we will write here the on the database for create procedure, alter procedure, drop procedure. Mean for the all these scenarios, this procedure will fire the event. And this is the code for this procedure. Here we will write the code to insert the values in our table whenever there is that changes related to the procedure, and there is the event data. It is a built-in function which will be used only in the DDL triggers, and it will return the transaction event details whenever there is the changes. So we will create this trigger. This DDL trigger is created, and now this is our procedure which we have created in the earlier module when we had discussed the stored procedures. And here in this procedure is we are passing one parameter. Now we are going to change, and we will add another parameter, and we will see either over this DDL trigger will record this change or not. So I'm going to add another parameter, and I'm going to change this procedure by using the alter statement, and then I will see the changes. So there is some, sorry, there is the syntax error, and now it's okay, and I'm going to change this stored procedure. So this stored procedure is changed. Now I will see either this trigger which we created for the stored procedure changes is storing the changes in our user defined table or not. This is the table which we are created. Yeah, it's the change is stored, and glad to see this is the XML data, and here it's storing the alter procedures. This procedure is altered, and this is the code what we altered. It's all is stored in this, and this is the date and time for when we change this procedure. So this is the event, and this all information which server this change occurred, and who changed. This is the user who changed the, and this is the database user, and in this database the change happened, and this is the schema, and the object is the stored procedure. So all these changes are stored in our user defined table. So by using the DDL trigger, we can track out the structural changes. The other kind of trigger is DML trigger. This trigger fire the event whenever there is a changes in the data. And there are two types of DML trigger, for or after triggers. For or after triggers will fire the event whenever there is a insert, update or delete command related to the data. And there is the type of DML trigger is instead of. This trigger will be occurred when this trigger will, instead of triggers allow you to skip an insert, delete or update statement to a table or view and execute other statements defined in the trigger instead. Before going to the demo, the purpose of the DML trigger is to maintain the data integrity and enforce the company business rules. I mean, we can maintain the data consistency by using the DML triggers. Whenever the DML triggers fired an event, and two special kind of virtual tables inserted and deleted are created, which are available in this DML triggers, and these tables keeps the values before changes and after changes, and this table structure is same like the tables which we are using in the DML triggers which are firing the event. So let's go to our demo. This is the query analyzer tool of SQL Server, and here we will use our example database trading DB, and we will see how to create a DML trigger. We will create a DML trigger on the employee table, and we will make a logic that whenever the employee name is changed, the DML trigger will fire an event, and it will store the information who changed and when changed the employee name. So for this we will create our user defined table, employee audit, and this table will store these changes, and in this table have the fields employee ID, employee name, and the operation and audit time. So I'm going to create this table. After creating a table, I will create this trigger. This trigger will fire only when we update the employee name. So this is the syntax for the DML trigger: create trigger, trigger name, and on the object name, that for which object we are going to create this trigger. We are going to create this trigger for the employee table and for update only. Here we see that DML trigger can be used for update, for insert, and for delete. So we will use only for the update. Whenever the employee name will be updated, we will make the logic in this trigger that the trigger should have to store the information of the person who changed and at what time is changed in our user defined table. So I'm going to this DML trigger. The trigger is created. Now this is our user defined table, and now this is the employee for which I'm going to change the name of the employee D70. Right now the name is Kamil. I will replace the name Kamil with the test. So this is the update statement. It will replace the name of the employee Kamil with test. Now we will see either our trigger fired the event, and if it is fired, our table will store these changes. So this is our user defined table which will store the changes. So let's see the table. Yeah, the changes are recorded. So this is the employee ID 70. First the name was Kamil, and the update operation occurred at this time, and after update the employee ID 70 name is changed to test, and this is the insert happened at this time. So the DML trigger recorded all the required changes which we instruct in the DML trigger logic. In this video segment, we came to know what are the triggers and what are the types of the triggers, for what purpose triggers we are using, and we explored these types and of the triggers with examples.